really annoying, right? Like you would be losing loot tokens by going above 10. So hopefully it does in fact work that way.
Dude, I love that. I love that you had the investigative journalism already on deck for this question.
I've been asking around about this one, so I've got my. But again, that is an unconfirmed source, unnamed unconfirmed source. But hopefully that is how it works. It is not confirmed. All right. Speaking of Q&A questions from chat and stuff, I think we should get to that. But first, we get to thank supporters over on the Patreon. They are: why do I get a 30-minute penalty for leaving a time-walking dungeon, but I can leave anyone's key and then queue for another?
Dude, I actually do think that there's a little bit difference. I will say that I think that there's something different about queuable content versus grouped content out of it, even if it is out of LFG.
I do think you shouldn't get a lever penalty if you get kicked, though. I don't know, especially like, I guess it's to stop you from like griefing to get kicked instead of leaving. I guess that makes sense, but like, man, it feels bad. There's so many cases just like somebody joins, it's a 4-stack, the 4-stack kicks them and they get a lever penalty. Like, that's just messed up. That
would suck.
At least it shouldn't happen if a 4-stack kicks you or like a 3-stack kicks you, right? Like that. It should not come.
I mean, that could even be triggered by joining a group with your friends and they just remove you as a joke and they like put a lockout on your character. Like,
I'd be so annoyed.
Like that. Yeah. I don't know if that could really work in this kind of game mode.
More often than not, like, I don't think you need a lever whenever you leave like an M+ dungeon either, right? Like sometimes people are being bad actors. And saying that it never happens is just a lie. But I think more often than not, people act pretty reasonably whenever they leave a key. They only leave the key whenever something has gone wrong. And obviously the times where it's like shitty of them sticks out in your mind, but more often than not, whenever you or somebody else leaves a key, like, you don't need a penalty because you wiped 3 times and you're not timing that dungeon. Like, you don't need a penalty.
I think something like the League of Legends system of like, hey, if you leave one time walking dungeon, you get a warning, right? And then if you leave like if you leave your next time walking dungeon, now you're going to start getting a queue penalty or whatever. I think that would be better as well than just like immediately giving you deserter. But I don't know if the technology is there in our World of Warcraft for that level of sophistication. Quackshock finally got all his portals. Congrats, Quackshock. Never knew, Ja, King of Skills, Dratnus the Dinopillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Chewy. What if astrology is real, but humans don't have the math yet to prove it? Like before Newton discovered calculus for gravity, people once believed the Earth was flat. That's a good point. I think astrology is real, though. You can just see the stars up in the sky. It's obviously true, right? So
true, yeah.
You know what? You're making a good point. I do see all of the stars in the sky.
Yeah. Well, you can't see all of them, right? Because half of them are below Earth at any given time.
All of the ones that I can't see just don't exist.
I see. Okay, yeah. We're still working on object permanence over there. Yeah. ZivXX, Salty Senny, Necris, Simora, Tankdil, Nevuk, Eevee, Unholy DK's Rise Up, No Trick, I Forgot I Was Subbed Here, Dymat, Freehold Waiting Room, Rework Mistweaver, PSA, causing a wipe in a key doesn't count if you scream at people then rage quit before the key is complete. Good tech. That's good tech. Nyx, well, I was wrong. The devs must actually understand the players. Gallic, Crucif, Tyrannosaurus Abyss, Nakud Offensive is named after Clan Nakud. What are the other 3 major clans of the Maruk? Like and subscribe if Dratnus gets them all. Tirai.
Okay.
Shakar.
Okay.
Onir.
Okay.
So that's my final answer.
We had a lore question last week about the Aegis of Agrabah, and we were very lost.
What was the question? Was it the other artifacts?
Yeah. Hold on.
Tidestone of Golganeth. Okay, Tidestone of Golganeth, Aegis of Agrabah. There's like the Tear of Purity or something.
Tear of Elune?
Tear of Elune.
Excuse me.
I don't remember the last one.
I can't remember the others either.
Oh, yeah,
That's like the only one I know.
And HOV Scovald is after the Aegis of Agrabah. What are the other pillars of creation?
Yeah.
That's what it was. We did not know anything of them.
M Sanity, Xena, Rogue is now good enough for Prog, but it's still bad enough to use that for SLG. Plus up, Red Color.
Plus up.
YouTube.com/Workbringer, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Evolved Gaming, #1 Simsky Petrelsky, Lurka's back in the States, but was he ever really gone from our hearts? Milk, Sife, Pone, Windwalker must deal with nerfs by rolling with punches, Thesaurus.com is a powerful tool, the Marsh Hare, Veil Strider Spar, In Before Blizzard brings back Stonecore for 10.2 so they can keep the theme of seasons, with a worm boss alive. Big Head Small Brain. Narnar TV says hi to Uncle Carmine. Agitar Juniper. Evoker is now V Phoenix because again, pink class equals damage. Husky plays a plus 16 gardening until 10.1. Well, you got any gardening tips? Any lawn care? Maybe tip of the weeks for? You don't have to give them now. You can save them for tip of the week for next week, but could be good. Lawn.
I'll have to think on that.
Okay, yeah.
Just think of my basic lawn and how to improve it by next week.
Rat Run out of town this week, so I'll fill like a pop punk legend, and then this guy just typed nah like 30 times. I'm not gonna say nah 30 times. Nah. Chauncey. that moment where your tank says, now where's my ranged at? During Jade Serpent Dragon Boss and Bricks Your Keys. Feral Druids in the MDI, you've got to be kidding me. Oh, you don't have that yet? Boom. Sire Dematicus and the small mammal living in Dratnus' shirt and Sapphire.
Oh, he really loves reading that one, I can tell.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, we
What's up?
I wish I saw this earlier. Apparently there was a community council live chat with Matt Villers and Morgan Day
Interesting.
over in Plus that we missed. So after
cool.
you listen to this podcast, you should go listen to that. Looks like it's an hour long.
I see. Is there a Wowhead post that summarizes it yet?
Not yet. Squishy DM'd me some screenshots if you want to pull up some of the most important quotes.
Sure.
There's that.
Yeah, I forgot that was going on.
Yeah, I didn't know that was going on. I'm
probably
a
go and
community
watch
council emeritus member now. My year in the community council is up. I never asked any questions or said anything on the forums. I was quite bad at my job. I'm sorry, everybody. In my defense.
So like a true college alumni.
Yeah, I didn't have anything. I never had a good point. I was saving my post and I didn't have one. The problem was like I would have had some at the start, but then they just kept making good changes in the last few months of mine, so I just never had anything to complain about as I was running out of time. So, anyways, okay.
Solid.
One of the overarching goals for Season 2 was a little bit of de-escalation, disarming of dungeons and affixes. Seems really good.
Go with
Again,
this? Yeah.
There's just kind of nowhere to go, but this was the only direction that I think was good to take them, and that will like leave them some room above now to push affixes and dungeons a little bit if they need to. Affixes are meant to provide a challenge. We saw some degree of that with Thundering, where we had the Kiss Curse element. We said we need to offset this so we don't run into a situation where actually a level 7 M+ is easier than level 6 M+, because now you've got all these buffs that are turning on. So this is them saying why the regular affixes aren't Kiss Curse. I do kind of remember this a little bit with, you remember Awakened Workshop? Where level 10 Workshop was actually much easier than level 9 because you could just skip the whole gauntlet with the Awakened Obelisk.
Yeah.
That was really funny.
Nice.
Something similar happened with Shrouded, where Shrouded was you saw more keys being timed at the level 10 affix whenever Shrouded got added to dungeons as opposed to whenever it was new, because just because of how it interacted with some of the mobs.
Yeah, I think if they wanted to fix this though, they could just put the health coefficient thing on it as well, like a health and damage, like, hey, level 7 is just gonna be 2 levels worth of health and damage, right? Like
Squishy and I were talking the other day, and he is actually like firmly of the opinion that one affix row should be negative and one affix row should be purely positive. Would you be okay with that?
I would be okay with it. I don't think it needs to happen, but I think affixes, I think Entangling, for instance, is going to be a great affix, and it doesn't have anything positive for the character. Reaping was a great affix, and unless you were funneling, I guess it didn't do anything positive for you. So I don't think it's necessary, but I do think it's a space I would be happy if they explored that space a little bit more, because it's often been good. But Thundering is a Kiss Curse affix, and it sucks. So Kiss Curse isn't the silver bullet.
Yeah, I think that it certainly can improve.
I think in a perfect world that sounds really cool. I just don't know how they would ever balance having a positive buff and a negative buff every week that rotates.
A major goal of ours moving into Season 2 is that, and the direction that we are moving is that we want the dungeon to be the most impactful that you're interacting with. The affixes are there to add texture and variety and enable opportunities for you to feel like a hero and use some utility. This seems to be, again, this is what we've been talking about a lot, is playing the dungeon, not the affixes, has been something we've been hoping to get back to. So I'm glad that they're agreeers.
These are definitely the things that we were looking for, is just because like a lot of the times the dungeons felt like they were too much affix favored in a lot of situations where it's like, oh, thank God I lost a minute and a half to bolstering here. What more could I have done?
Alright, then there's
Well, before we move to that last one, I think that they've actually largely solved this issue of playing the affix now with all these recent insanely good changes, except for Incorporeal. I think is still in that boat where you're gonna have to play that affix way more than the dungeon. That's the only one, honestly.
I think we tend to agree.
some of the design philosophy in Season 2 has been to pull damage out of the affixes. Entangling, Incorporeal, Afflicted, they all don't have damage associated with their penalties. If they go off, you might take a throughput hit. It's going to slow down your run, but people won't suddenly die, or they shouldn't. I think in high
by
keys,
entangling.
Yeah, in high keys, like if you get stunned by entangling, you're probably pretty likely to die. Not that. I mean, compared to a Thundering Stun, right? A Thundering Stun is like 6 seconds, and it deals 150% of your health while it's active. An Entangling Stun is just 3 seconds, and it doesn't do any damage by itself. So I think you're probably going to live it most of the time you get stunned, but you definitely might die, but I think that's fine, especially in high keys.
And in an Afflicted Mob going off, you're at 0 haste for 8 seconds, or Incorporeally doing 50% reduced healing and damage.
Yeah, again, though, that's like...
You're not instantly dying, I guess. That is true.
wall, right? Like, I don't know, like, obviously if it goes off in a 27 where if anything goes wrong, you're going to wipe, right? But, like, if I think there's counterplay to this even in, like, the 24 range, which is good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
totally reasonable. I think that... I also tend to agree that you shouldn't instantly die if you watch yourself die because you can't press Death Strike because your haste is 0.
Dude,
you know.
the thing about Thundering, man... It's worse than killing you. It stuns you for 6 seconds and does like 8 zillion damage, but it doesn't just straight up kill you. It's like in... You ever played TFT and somebody has one of those avatars where it plays a cutscene before it kills you?
Yes!
It's so tilting. You're just sitting there watching this cutscene go off, knowing that you're dead, but you have to sit there and watch it happen. It doesn't just instantly kill you. That's exactly what Thundering feels like.
That's the worst, man.
Dies of cutscene.
Yeah,
dies of cutscene. Yep.
Oh, man.
Holy shit. That's a good one. Holy moly.
And then finally we have... I think that we just have to accept that when we're giving players an infinitely scaling mode and you can make it as hard as you want, we're basically saying, yeah, go nuts, figure out ways to be creative, figure out ways to break the game.
I love it.
I think that, I mean, to some extent, like, you know, if they see something they don't want us to do, they can and should fix that and continue to fix them. But to some extent, it's like, certain things, it's like, yeah, okay, if this is the way that everybody solves this problem and it's within the rules, like, I don't know, when they fix that, they should then nerf the underlying thing if it was, like, super egregious or something, I don't know.
Typically, my view on things, it really depends on, like, what context this is brought up in. If you're looking at, like, exploit versus creative use of game mechanics, typically my line is, like, if it was something that was, like, originated outside of the dungeon itself, more often than not, I think that's, like Zenkiki originated outside. I mean, we talked about this like, maybe a couple weeks ago. Zenkiki originated outside of the dungeons themselves. Right, where it's like I view that as like people got punished for it, whereas like whatever, if you're snapping a mob, that's like okay, yeah, that's just like how the dungeon works, right? Like it's not a way to get banned.
I mostly think about like, is this something I would like to be correct to do? Right? Is this something am I happier that I will do this in all of my dungeon runs, or is this something that's making me sad? For instance, Freehold. Do you remember in Freehold when you would go in M0 and kill Ludwig on M0 so that you didn't have to kill him on M+?
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
That is something that I hope they change or make, you know, like that's something where I'm hoping they change it because it's not fun to do, right? Like, I don't want every Freehold dungeon that I do to involve me stealthing ahead and killing Ludwig on M0 before we start the dungeon, because that is stupid and annoying. So... if there's stuff like that, or getting Zenkiki, or even like getting some Draenor Profession item to make something work, those are the things where I'm like, okay, this is kind of dumb, right? Like, I don't like that M+ is about this. But when it's like, hey, you know, you're snapping these mobs, or like you're pulling this mob through a wall or whatever, those things I think can be cool and interesting to do. If it's a case of like, oh, the dungeon is, you know, 3 minutes faster or 5 minutes faster by doing this versus not, then I think that it's probably too valuable, too powerful to do that, and they should not, it shouldn't be that good, right? Like, the difference between snapping and not snapping in some of these dungeons, I think should be, it's something that, it's good that it's not a Talbazar anymore, right? Where, like, you're just completely trolling if you don't snap.
Snapping just has so many issues involved with its existence. Like, I really wish they would just make it so snapping always took the player to the mob, so that you can never
The problem with that is
ever
it's
abuse
really unfun to have that happen to you accidentally, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're like a casual player, you're just doing a dungeon and a mob just teleports you to it and then one-shots you, like, if that starts happening more often, I think people would be mad in lower keys.
Charles, just think about every single time a mob has evaded in the history of this game. If every single time it evaded, it snapped you to it, it would be fucking.
Dispel.
Well, yeah, but like, the thing is, if casual players experience that, it's kind of the same thing as if they accidentally tagged a mob and it snapped to them on the next pull or whatever, because that's still going to be like a wipe situation for them no matter what. And I think I would rather risk that in this game at this point, because like the fact that all the MDI teams and TGP teams have to do snapping to be competitive and just risk an RNG chance of losing their run or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that consequence is way worse than having like an evade mob snap the tank to them every once in a while.
I see where you're coming from with this then. Okay.
I think that it would be
I've-
better. Like, they used to be that mobs were more consistent with how they snapped, right? Like, this whole thing in Algathar where it's like 90% chance that some of the lashers don't snap or whatever is really annoying. I agree that part of it's annoying because it's just like, oh, this is the best strategy. You're only going to time the key if you do this, and yet if you do this, you're also just opening up RNG of it failing. Like that, that.
Yeah, I just really don't like that chance. I think that well, here's the thing about snapping is it used to be when it first started being noticeable in like Legion BFA, there were two types of snapping. One, the way we just talked about, where the mobs pull the players to the mobs instantly.
Yeah.
Or two, the mobs snap to the players instantly without evading at all. They just come right to you and fight you wherever you are. And that was like the Atal'Dazar snap. And then they changed it going into Shadowlands, I think, where when mobs teleport to players, they now evade for like 3 to 4 seconds and then become active and resume their cast sequence.
I will say the Darkheart Thicket one, which is the first one you referenced, was so painfully annoying though.
Yeah, that was annoying for sure. I don't remember even encountering that as like a casual player in Legion, personally.
What do you think? What would you think about instead of them snapping you to them, just resetting if they, like, especially if it was like 40 yards away or whatever, like if you do the Algathar snap and it just it's like, oh, that guy's 100 yards away from me.
Oh yeah.
I'm just dropping combat, right?
Shrine of the Storm had that, where if you got too far away, they would just leash. They would evade and leash. And not
I
snap at all.
forgot about that.
Do you remember like Toldagor and Shrine, where it was like if you jumped, the mobs would evade or would reset, but if you didn't jump, they would stay on you? Yeah.
Dude, you remember that Shrine of the Storm rock that you walked over, and you snapped the mobs into them, and it would evade the whole pack out, and every other mob that you walked into for like the last like 15 seconds would just evade out and reset, and you're like, this is the greatest stealth skip of all time, and it is just like the whole dungeon.
I think all these have like their pros and cons, but I feel like that last version of it is actually better than just having the option to snap mobs and risk the failure, you know? Like, I don't know. I feel like something should be done about it.
You couldn't get the mobs out of the rock. That's the problem with that. I don't know.
All right.
There's definitely something they could do.
Our next question comes from Paul in Discord, who says, a little bit less of a question, more of a thought experiment or something. In an attempt to rework the M+ title to be less of a measure of time invested and more a measure of efficiency and skill, what if it worked like this? A set number of weeks into the season, the title activates. Anyone who is within range of the title for some other number of time earns the title. So, like, the title activates some number of weeks in, and then if you spend a month above the title cutoff, you get the title. And it's any of the time in there, rather than like end of season, the title locks in and you get above. You have points if you're above it or whatever.
Would have to be a lower number of players. Right.
Well, yeah, I guess because in theory more people could get this title. Also in theory less could, right? Like if, you know, if 9,000 people were competing for 1,000 spots and they each spent 2 weeks above the line, nobody would get the title, right? But in practice, yeah.
Yeah. I guess. I don't know. I guess.
I think it's interesting.
That would be kind of interesting. I view the measurable downside is like it de-incentivizes players to play through the whole entire season, which I think is.
Well, you do.
I think that you should. I think that
you
you
have
should play
to
the whole
stay
season.
above the line for a whole month, right? Like, you have to get really far ahead of it to be safe for a month to stop playing, right?
I really like where the title thing is at right now because it creates this whole scene of pug players that are really good. Like there's some really solid pug players doing 26s in LFG. I keep coming across them every week, like helping certain friends pug their keys, trying to get rank 1 title. I love that people are still playing this late in the season. I think it's actually been really good for the community at large.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if because there's some games that have like points that you accumulate every week, you know, right, based on where you are on the ladder, that kind of stuff. I would be open to seeing something like this, but I do agree with you, Trell, that like the current system does have a lot of nice stuff about it too that I'd be worried about losing. So, yeah, it's an interesting idea though. I think it's cool. All right, next question comes from Fizzlewiz in Discord that says, "Do we ever see a future where all casters can cast and move without spells such as Ice Flows? Is planting to cast a necessary mechanic or just a dated one?" So basically, it's like, would we ever move to a world where all casts are castable while moving? No, I don't think so. I think that's like a core part of spell casting is you have to be standing still while doing it, right? Like, I don't know. I think you could make an MMO without that, but it seems... I think it's too, like, woven into the fabric of WoW. I wouldn't be surprised if we keep seeing a little bit more creep towards castable while moving, but... because that, like, historically, right, over the past 10 years, a lot casters now have more, like, tools for casting while moving, such as Ice Flows and Hover and stuff, but... I don't think it's going to move to a world of, like... every spell just works while moving now.
Even
that's always just like
and stuff like that have been woven into most ranged DPS too. Were you gonna say, Charles? Sorry.
I was just gonna say that's like a very common theme in every MMO and ARPG. Like multiple game modes have this caster versus melee paradigm where a lot of people kind of like fit in one category over the other, and it's kind of cool to like share that unique perspective versus one another, or some players that play both perspectives all the time. It's kind of cool to swap back and forth. I can't really see it going anywhere, personally.
Yeah, I think that the cast, like a lot of the skill expression of playing a caster as well comes from like the fact that you can't cast while moving, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is obviously like annoying whenever you get owned, right? Whenever you have to cancel your fire blast at 0.1 seconds or whatever. Like, okay, yeah, that sucks, but like. Planning out your movement, doing your movement globals while you're moving, like that is all the skill of, or that's a large part of the skill of being a ranged DPS, right?
Nothing makes me feel dumber than having to cancel a cast over halfway through, and then you plant and you start casting again, and you have to cancel the second one again. You were like, I am an idiot. I do not deserve to cast anymore. Like I am so dumb, because if you have to, like, if you plant and you cancel 2 casts in a row, that means you just fucked something up.
Yeah. Or you just got very unlucky with being targeted by McCann. Sometimes that does happen, right? Someone's like, oh, the swirlies have all been targeting me, but yeah.
More often than not, it's a mistake, but yeah, you can't just be unlucky.
All right, well, we've exhausted our questions list for the week. We've exhausted our topics list for the week. That means we've exhausted our episode for the week. We will be back next week to discuss some more. That'll be, I guess, our last podcast of 10.0 cycle, so hopefully it should be a good one. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us, though. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast, and we will see you next week.
GG.
GG's.
Hey, welcome to episode 173 of the Titanforge podcast. I'm Dratnos, joined by Tettles.
Yo, what's up, dudes? We're back.
And Trell.
Yo, what's up, Tettles? You missed the memo on wearing light blue today.
Yeah.
I have a light blue shirt that I could have worn if I got the memo. I unfortunately missed the assignment.
Unbelievable.
No worries, next time.
Yeah.
What's next week?
We don't know yet.
TBD.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Word.
Will patrons in the show Discord let us know, and we'll
is that what is this going down here?
That's right. Bonus Patreon perk implemented right now. Choose the color of the color scheme for next week's show, episode 174. All right,
Dude,
I don't know. I don't know if we should start down that path again. Soon they're gonna make us make triangles again.
There's no way. It's mathematically impossible to make a triangle when you've got this shape here. That it can't be done.
That's true.
There's just no.
surely there's a way.
It's not possible. I can't. Charl doesn't have enough arms to like link a triangle.
Yeah, I need like 4 arms at least.
Go across, go across, go across.
There's no way.
There's no way.
It's just, it can't be done. Okay, so this week we're going to do a show this week, obviously, as I'm sure you've already gathered. We're also going to do a show next week, and that'll be when the new patch is out, but the new content, the season, won't be out yet. And then we're going to take a few weeks off for the start of the season, because that's obviously a busy time for all of us, although you can check out our individual channels and our streams and stuff if you want to find us there for a while. And then we'll be back. If I had to guess, I would say probably May 25th we would return.
Okay.
But it's, plus or minus depending on how the patch launch goes and such.
I mean, we're going to be also doing, like, daily recaps of the Race World first and a bunch of other stuff that's going on, too. So it's not like we're going to have, like, no content and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, just the podcast itself is going to take a little bit off.
Yep.
All right, so without further ado, this week we've got some interviews to cover. We also have some other news from the patch. And in terms of just hottest, most recent news, there is a affix change to Incorporeal and Afflicted that I thought we would start off with here, which is the spawn rate has been nerfed of Incorporeal and Afflicted. Afflicted seems to be down to 30-second intervals from 20, and Incorporeal seems to be on 45, up from 20. So huge, more than double the spawn rate nerf here for Incorporeal. Both also seem to be on a somewhat similar to Quaking logic, although Quaking spawn logic, so for those who don't know, is when you were in dungeon with Quaking active, once every 20 seconds, the game would just randomly decide either there was or wasn't a Quake, and that was the only time a Quake could happen. Afflicted and Incorporeal seem to have that sort of static, fixed time RNG, whether or not there is a spawn thing. But unlike Quaking, it seems like it is not going to happen out of combat. So
okay, so it's like Thundering.
Yeah, closer, I guess, to Thundering. Although Thundering had this like 5-second variance built into it that Quaking didn't have on when it could spawn.
Thundering also couldn't be skipped to where this can.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is going to be like you can get an Afflicted every 30 seconds, but you could also get an Afflicted skipping a spot here, right? Like here in this clip, they went a whole minute without it showing up once, right?
This is definitely a better change. I mean, I was talking, Charl, Crassus, and myself were talking about some stuff like before the podcast even started, and him and I were discussing it, and I still think that Incorporeal is just too hard. Like, I was testing it again last weekend, and while it is better with the spawn rate reductions, there's a cap on the amount that you can get and stuff like that, it still, at least in my personal opinion, seems like it's too impactful, and if you ever mess it up, like, you get punished an inordinate amount. Because, like, if you think about the other affixes, like Volcanic, for example, if you mess it up, you just get knocked up in the air. Whereas with Incorporeal, if you mess it up one time, and it's not even an issue of, like, most of the time, like, say, like, 9 out of 10 times you get the Incorporeal right, but if you mess it up once, you're getting punished, like, a significant amount to the point where there's a decent degree of chance that you wipe. Now, and I don't think it's just an issue of, like, bosses and overlaps, it's just, like, an issue of, is this too punishing? I don't know. I'm not really sure the answer.
Yeah. Good.
Maybe if it was toned down to like 30% less damage. I mean, it's 50% right now, right? Is that how it is?
Yes.
Like, that is kind of insane. Maybe 30% would be a little bit better, but I don't think it's the end of the world if it has some kind of downside in this arena. Because I think 45-second intervals is pretty doable for this affix. I was actually expecting a 30-second interval. That would have been reasonable in my mind.
I guess there's a question of, like, even with Thundering timers or Quaking timers, how often do you actually look at them, right? More often than not, you play reactionary games whenever you see either the Quaking circle spawn on you, or you see the Thundering come out. Like, infrequently is it preemptive, right? And, like, while this is a good change because it allows you to be preemptive with it, I don't play the game, like, super preemptively, and maybe that's just me being bad. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like with Thundering, the best way to do it is definitely to, you know, look at it and be aware of it and like save your Grief Torch for 20 seconds or whatever for it. And with Quaking, I find myself with Quaking looking at it mostly just like if we're about to Shroud, right? Something like that. Like you look at the Quaking
or a
timer.
stack mechanics coming up in like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Or just like a couple conditional moments where you like look at a timer for Thundering or Quaking and you're like, okay, we should worry about this.
But yeah, with Incorporeal and with Afflicted, I don't think there's going to be too much need to do that. Yeah, I mean, I do think you'll still want a weak aura that gives you that timer and tells you, like, just in case you want to refer to it. But I agree, it's probably not something you're going to want to worry too much about.
I just worry that's too much of a pain in the ass to kind of deal with, right? And it's like the part that at least I had the most trouble with is like the Golem boss in Ultimon. And like they spawn on players, which is fine, but more often than not, you have like 2 players that are assigned to deal with them with you know, like spammable CC or like low cooldown CC. And if those 2 players aren't, you know, either able or they don't see the spawn, it's like really challenging to be able to deal with well.
Yeah, I agree. That's the situation where I was thinking is still going to be the outlier, like really difficult part. Or let's say the tank is the one with the CC and you're kind of stuck in one spot, which is often the case, and it's out of your range. Like, what do? You know, that kind of thing is kind of
or you don't
scary.
See it. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that being aware of the incorporate, like, I think if it explodes because you didn't see it, that's probably something that's okay, as long as, you know, if there's a boss where you're spread out across an 100-yard area, then that's sort of annoying, but I think if that's the skill of the affix is like noticing it, then that's fine. But if it's like, if there are boss fights that have patterns where it's like you can legitimately have 3 out of 5 people in your party like notice it and try and fix it and not be able to, I do think that's bad. On the 45-second interval, like, most classes have something good against this, even if it is on that longer cooldown, right? Like, yes, they note DK and Warrior, which will struggle with this still potentially, but even there, like, you have, you know, your individual kick once, you have your Stormbolt or Asphyxiate or whatever type effects that, like, can tide you over until somebody else can get there.
My issue with Incorporeal has never been the amount of CC that is required, right? I mean, that is particularly annoying, and if you ran out of CC for the affix, like, obviously there is something that is, like, massively wrong with that if you just, like, don't have enough CC for it. My issue is more just, like, how to deal with it seems a bit tough, and especially since it's so punishing if you mess it up.
Yeah, I do think that in general the affixes, like, the Thundering Stun harshness was bad, and the Incorporeal failure harshness I think is also bad.
It's like explosive, right? It's like in my mind it's probably slightly less impactful than messing up an explosive, but it's certainly close.
It's tough though, because like you can't nerf it by that much before it gets to a point where if it stops like being really bad to let it go off, then pretty quick it will start being correct to just ignore it and let it go off, right? And like, yeah, that's not what they want either. So I don't know. I feel like going from 20 to 45 on this is really good, and
I agree. It's good nerf.
Yeah. Maybe the damage and healing nerf that it gives you can be like dispellable, so the healer can dispel themselves and then still heal the group or something. I don't know. That could be a way to make it a little bit less of like a wipe. But yeah. The Afflicted timer, so with Afflicted, I previously thought it was probably fine-ish at 20. After testing it on PTR a little bit, I think going up to 30 is going to be nice for this. Like, it was doable on 20, and especially if you had off dispels in your group, it was pretty good, but it was quite frequent that you were getting these things, and it was like, it was the kind of thing where it was like you're dispelling on CD, right? Basically, these Afflicted things, and
yeah, and you were basically like
good.
Playing the affix, right? Which is what they're trying to get away from now.
Yeah,
I think 30 is good too. I really like these changes.
I think that Afflicted is certainly in a better spot than Incorporeal, but I think that's largely to deal with like how you deal with it more often than not.
High energy.
The only downside with Afflicted now, in my mind, is one, if you just don't have any kind of off dispel, it's just way harder. And two, the same thing as Incorporeal, where if it spawns out of your range and you're stuck in one spot or something for a mechanic or you're a tank, then it's twice as hard for the group to take care of.
Now, admittedly, I've always played the hybrid spec that had it off dispel, so I don't know what that would look like without.
Yeah, not good. Or dude, if your healer just hasn't talented their thing that empowers their dispel, that's gonna be the first key of Afflicted week, healer realizes they have that wrong. The key is dead type.
Wait, is it not
they have to
magic
zone out.
dispellable?
No, it's only poison, curse,
Oh.
disease dispellable.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Invite a mage to every key.
Otherwise, like
think a mage
Shadow
is dispelling
Priest
those, bro?
and Warlock would have good counterplay against it too, which maybe would be cool.
Well, do I think that mage is going to be dispelling those? Yeah, probably, because I think that mage is going to be meta next season. So, we'll see.
I can almost guarantee it'll end up being somebody else's job somehow. If a mage has the ability to take care of a mechanic.
Well, the mage
If
can also
there's a way
polymorph
they
the-
cannot take care of the mechanic, it'll happen.
Dude, this is so messed up that you're slandering Hopeful. You did the fake push with him, whatever, the reject challenge.
The break the meta challenge, that's true.
Yeah.
That's where this data is coming from, actually.
one mage.
Dude, maybe this will be the season we see the rare utility mage instead of the damage mage coming out.
They're gonna have to polymorph the incorporeals too, man.
Yeah. That's a lot of value.
They can talent mass poly. Maybe.
Oh yeah, does Mass Poly hit multiple incorporeals? I feel like we're never gonna know because they'll never
Solar
press it.
beam. Solar beam actually blankets both if they're close enough. So I suspect that mass poly probably can.
Oh, that's so. It's cool that Solar Beam hits 2 of them, but Shockwave doesn't hit any of them. That's
Oh,
that's really
so
nice.
cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Not that I can't sweep them.
Yep, that's sweet. That's whew. Pretty nice.
And that's real aggro right there.
Let's move on to talking about some of the interviews that have happened this week. Before we spend too long on this topic, and I punch my desk. So we've had several interviews between Ian and NA and EU content creators, sort of en masse, not recorded, but just like there are these, I guess, content creator interviews, which, you know, hypothetically, if they did happen, it was probably happening really early before people wanted to wake up or something. But I've heard that this is what was happening in them. So there was a bunch of things covered in these. We're not going to go exhaustively through them. I've made a video where I kind of popped through and picked out a few of the different things in here. Some, I think, of the big notes, though. Crafted gear automatically being bumped up to 421. Any 418 crafted piece is getting automatically bumped up. That is now confirmed. I think I've talked about this a few times as something that was probably going to happen, but it is confirmed now, so that's kind of big.
This is epic. I'll finally get a 421 weapon.
Wait,
This
you
season.
don't have. Wait, you couldn't get a 421 weapon?
Monk has no good 421 weapon option, so you just wear the crafted weapons the entire season.
Oh, because you don't want to wear the Kurog Grim Totem polearm, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or the fist weapons.
Or the one-hander.
Or the Dathio. I guess Dathio is a Warglaive or something. Yeah, okay. That's,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so funny that you didn't wear those. What the hell?
And then I guess the rest of the stuff in this NA interview.
The NA one wasn't
pretty dry. Yeah.
yeah.
There was stuff about them not planning to change the Mythic lockout system, which we've talked about before. I think I personally would still like to see that changed, but this is the kind of classic Blizzard thing of they've answered this like 40 times, then they keep getting asked it, and they're going to keep giving the same answer, and at some point maybe they'll change their mind, but until then, that's what they're going to say.
Side note, I have a question. Would you be okay if there was no heroic loot lockout on heroic raid?
Like, so you could just keep resetting and killing the boss and getting all the items from heroic?
Yeah.
I think that would be bad. I think that would be very bad.
I think a lot of people would like that, but I think the majority of people would not because that just makes it like even more. If you have time to farm both heroic raid and mythic plus the first week, you can just be miles ahead of other players and
You know how
the tournament progression.
You know how people don't like doing splits, but most people don't have to do splits? You would just main run through heroic over and over again. You would reset Neltharion, you would spend 4 hours killing Neltharion and getting as many very rare items as you could, very rare trinkets off of that boss. And then you would come back for your next raid day and you would reset the raid and you would kill Neltharion.
You'd never do splits again.
You would not be doing splits, you would be on your mains killing Neltharion. And you would probably, if there was no heroic loot lockout, I think that you would probably kill Neltharion north of 50 times on your main in the first lockout if you were like a 16-hour raid week or something. Like,
Yeah,
that sounds horrific. I don't know.
They would probably also have to adjust loot drops to be even more rare because that was possible. So it'd be like an ARPG like Diablo or Path of Exile where the good items have like this 0.5% drop
yeah.
chance.
Yeah, I was
And
just,
it takes
I was
you
just
a
reading
million tries.
something, and it was like kind of interesting that they were like fielding the idea of not having a heroic lockout.
Yeah, I think that would be very bad. I think if the very rare items were like a personal loot roll once per week or something, maybe that could work. But even still, like that, it would be correct for
remove very rare items.
It would be correct for like any mythic raiding guild to spend all of their time in heroic until they had full like this heroic gear in that situation, which I think would suck.
What if there was 4 weeks between heroic and mythic opening then?
Final Fantasy enjoyer, I see.
Yeah. I think that's how it came up. That's how the comment came up, I think, is what it was. And they're like, so what if there was no heroic lockout? And then there was 4 weeks between mythic opening and heroic opening. I was reading, I was like, holy shit.
No. I guess that the heroic to mythic lockout part specifically wouldn't be that bad in my mind, because now that Mythic Plus is uncapped the first week, beyond, I guess that'd be cool to like gear for Mythic Raid. Like even the Race to World First guys would be able to fully gear with Mythic Plus. But then they would just run through all the bosses, I guess, until the last boss for free, so maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those first bosses already have kind of a weird identity in Mythic.
It's just so strange because M Plus is spammable, and it feels like the loot system doesn't really tie in that well with M Plus being spammable. Like the raid loot system, it feels like it's still a little bit disjointed. I think it's getting better this season with how the upgrade path is working though.
Yeah, I think like normal gear being upgradable to heroic eye level is really big.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Change for that.
Yeah.
Okay. There was also an EU version of this interview, which had the big news that Mythic Keystones will depreciate by 10 levels going into Season 2. It's actually 9 levels plus 1 if you depleted. So basically, if you time a 27 next week, you will get a 18 out of your box on May 9th. If you time a 20, you'll get 11 out of your box. If you deplete a 20, you'll get a 10 out of your box. If you deplete a 15, you'll get a 5 out of your box, basically. Those are kind of some examples of what will happen to your key. And again, that is not on May 2nd. That, like, the key you do the week of May 2nd to 9th will affect what you get on May 9th, right? Like, that is when this is going to happen. May 2nd through May 9th is still Season 1 keys, but Season 1 will be over, so like scores for title and stuff are going to be locked, I'm pretty sure. But that you'll still be able to go and there won't be any new like Mythic Plus or Raid content. What do you guys think about this 10 level depreciation for keys? For context, it used to be 3, 4, or sometimes 5 in this spot.
So first off, for most people, it's probably not going to matter too terribly much because doing a 16, especially with how they're changing the upgrade system, like doing a 16 versus doing a 20 outside of the vault is basically no difference because you're already on that upgrade track to be able to upgrade that gear as high as reasonably possible, right?
So to get gear that's on the hero track instead of the champion track, which is the gear that can go up to Mythic Eye level, you need to be doing 17s or higher.
Oh, 17s. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was 16s, but yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to do 17s. In addition to that, for context, people who do M Plus regularly and are sweaty enough to do PTR keys are timing 20s at 410 item level on the PTR currently. That, in my mind, kind of points towards the fact that players are going to be able to get their key back up pretty high as fast as possible, and this is like Blizzard telling us, oh, you think you can be able to do a 20 week 1, prove it. I don't think that you should be given a 20 immediately.
Right.
You prove that you are worthy for this, and if you are good enough, you should be able to get back there pretty fast.
It does kind of feel on PTR like the scaling factor hasn't been put in yet or something, right? Like the difficulty of the keys relative to eye level. I don't know. That's I don't know if you guys have had that experience as well, but I wouldn't be surprised if the keys were slightly harder at 410 eye level than they are on PTR right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I really don't mind this change because I think that introducing your friends to keys, especially if they don't know what's going on in these new dungeons, at like a 17 or 18 level or even a 14, 15 level, compared to just jumping straight into 20s, is probably more beneficial for the average player and average Mythic Raider player, I should say. Like even starting at 10s and working your way up to 15s, if that's your goal, I think is better than just jumping straight into 15s as well.
I think for a lot of players too, early on in the season, it's going to make a lot more sense for them. I mean, it's a brand new set of dungeons, right? I think that's one of the big things too. It's like it may be, and maybe it would be different if it was the exact same dungeons again, but since it's a brand new set of dungeons, it's going to take a while for some players to learn these new dungeons. It also is kind of beneficial for LFG too, if you're dropping keys 10 levels, because then it